Hi everybody, I'm Simon from VIEZU Technologies, and today's video we're going to be taking you through the Magic Motorsport Flex OBD training. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to show you the tools and equipment you're going to need for tuning pretty much any car OBD. Maybe subtle variations from cable that you're going to need from car to car, but it's all contained within the manual that we'll show you shortly when we've got the software open. So first things first, we're going to need a car. A lovely Fiesta 1 litre EcoBoost here at the side of me. We're going to need a laptop. Very importantly, we're going to need a battery stabiliser. So it's important that whenever you connect into a vehicle for anything OBD tuning wise, you've got a good, strong battery stabiliser connected to the vehicle. Not a charger, not a trickle charger or a jump pack, and definitely not jump leads from another vehicle. That is not a stable power supply. You want something that's got about a minimum 12 volt supply in there, and ideally 25 amps, or the capability for 25 amps, really is a minimum on there. Some of the modern cars can draw up to 70 or 80 amps depending on the systems and electronics that are in there, especially if the fans kick in when reading and writing. So generally something like the C-Tech Pro 25S is more than enough for most cars, and it's something we use on a day-to-day basis on everything from Ford Fiestas through to Ferraris, big Range Rovers and Mercedes, and small little Fiat Puntos and Abarth 500s. It's more than capable for everything we're doing on normal cars and vans. Next, and probably one of the most important things, is our diagnostic tool. We've got a snap-on diagnostic tool here. You don't have to use a snap-on. There's many other brands on the market, Autel, Launch, and so on. What we're saying is it's important you have a good diagnostic tool to be able to check the car's sort of health and condition. There's nothing worse than going to tune a car and it's got hidden sort of gremlins inside. Imagine it's got a boost pressure leak. It's showing underboost faults. You could be tuning and tuning and tuning that car to try and get more power, and the whole time it's got a mechanical defect. It doesn't matter how much you increase the turbo pressure, if there's a big hole in a pipe and it's throwing a fault code for it, you're never going to get more boost out of the thing. Just bleed into atmosphere. So it's important you do a bit of a health check on the car, checking fluids, checking levels, the main sort of basic mechanics on there is just a sort of good practice, but fault codes can be hiding. Just because there's not a check engine light on, or a little sort of orange or red light on the dashboard, doesn't mean there aren't underlying faults. They could be historic, could be pending. It's important that you know and understand the vehicle fully before you start tuning. Next, obviously again, quite importantly, we're going to need our Magic Motorsport Flex tool. We need the actual device that's going to interface between the laptop and the vehicle to get the ECU information, downloading a copy from the ECU, and of course putting the modified data back into it. Along with that, we've got it supporting USB cable. This is what connects the actual Flex to the laptop. And finally, we have our OBD2 cable. This connects obviously the Flex to the diagnostic port on the car, or OBD2 port. And last but not least, we have our wonderful extension lead. Often overlooked, especially with mobile tuning and things, it's quite important you have some sort of extension lead. You might not have access to the power. It might not be within the sort of range of your plug or your tool that you're working with at the time. Make sure you've got an extension lead. You really want mains power when you connect into vehicles. Make sure the laptop has got its charger in there. The last thing you want is the laptop going to sleep, or worse, just shutting down because the battery's gone when you're programming back to an ECU. That's equivalent to transferring something to a memory stick and just disconnecting it part way through. Bad things happen at that point, so make sure we have power on the laptop, make sure we've got power to the vehicle as well, and all that done through an extension lead. Okay, so we're going to hop to it now. We're going to connect all of the equipment to the vehicle, get ready with the diagnostics, check the car's in good health, and we're going to start the actual Magic Motorsport software and take you through step by step what we do in the software to connect to the vehicle and take the read. So we're going to connect the C-Tech battery stabiliser to the car now. It's important that when we're doing this, we don't have the C-Tech powered up, so it's not plugged into the extension lead at the moment. It's just an extra precaution. The last thing we want is if we catch, and we don't recommend you do this at home everybody, but if you catch these terminals together, you don't want anything accidentally sparking. It's possible you catch a component in the car, you lose grip on the cable, you don't want to spark or risk damaging the C-Tech. It's an expensive stabiliser. So first thing we're going to do is connect our positive to the positive terminal on the battery, making sure we've got a good connection in there. If we've got access to an earth point, we're going to connect our negative to an earth point on the vehicle. If not, you can go to the negative on the battery. It's always recommended though, if you can go to the earth point, that's best. So in this case, we're going to connect to the earth just here. So as we're connected to the battery terminals, the next thing we're going to do is plug in our C-Tech to the power supply. And we see we've got a nice green power light on here. And importantly, our battery stabiliser is in supply mode. That's the important thing. We're not in normal or recondition. or definitely not lithium, it's not a lithium ion battery, we're in supply mode. So that's giving a nice constant sort of supply to top everything up to 12 volts and will support up to 25 amps of drain through there. Nice stable power supply. It also gives us a little green light indicating the condition of the battery currently as well. So we know it's a good battery, got a good amount of charge in there, and it's in supply mode. We're good to go with the rest of the process. So we've connected the diagnostic to the vehicle, we've got the ignition on to ignition 2, and we're just going into the engine, confirming the ignition switched on, and we're going to check for any fault codes. So on this vehicle, it's a codes menu, memory codes option that we're going to select. It will differ from diagnostic tool to diagnostic tool, but generally we're going into the engine and we're checking for fault codes. And we can see there's no codes present at all. We know internally, from a software point of view, this car's in a good state of health. No underlying fault codes in there. It's great. We can crack on now with the reading and writing process. Okay, so we've got the power connected to the vehicle, we've got a stabilised power supply on there, that's all happy. We've checked the vehicle's diagnostics, there's no underlying fault codes or issues that we can see, so we're good to proceed. Let's get the Flex software open, let's connect to the car, take the read so we can start tuning the ECU. So to do that, we're going to double click on the Flex icon on the desktop. You can find it in your programs list or on the little taskbar at the bottom if you've added it to that shortcut link. Shouldn't take more than a few seconds to open. It is web-based, so it is important you have a stable internet connection. You'll notice this in the top left-hand corner of the software. We've got a little globe that's sort of highlighted in green. That means we've got internet connection. We must have some sort of internet connection because the browser's opened, of course. It is supported, by the way, through Chrome, Firefox and Edge or Windows Explorer. So you find on any of the three sort of main browsers that are out there. So we're greeted now with the Magic Motorsport Flex homepage. We can see on this homepage we've got the vehicle list, so we can jump straight into it and start looking for the vehicle to see if it's supported, connection methods, instructions, etc. We've got the help desk, so if we've got any problems with the tool, we can open a support ticket, speak to Magic Motorsport's engineers and say, hey, I can't communicate with this car, what's the issue, what can you see from the data? Usually, I have to say it's usually a sort of error of using the tool, it's the connection's not fully established, maybe the OBD port needs to just be pushed in a little bit further, bad connection on the tool, just screw the little OBD2 connector in a little bit better. Those sort of usual things that can occur. We'll see on there as well, it's showing device not connected, so it's important at this point we connect our device. USB port on the back, USB port cable connected, and we're going to connect to our USB on the computer. And we should see instantly, on the left-hand side, we've got the USB icon has applied itself in green, and that little sort of, you see little cubes at the bottom, basically showing it's synchronizing. Notice that on the right-hand side over here, it's got a little green tick, it's up to date, it's done the tool synchronization. When it's synchronizing, before it is finished, those little green cubes won't be highlighted. They'll be sort of like greyed out with a little X next to them. And we've also got, you may notice this, we've got a little power light flashing on the Flex tool. This is showing that you're connected to the computer, you've got a level of power coming through. It's not 12 volts that you'd have with the bench and the boot mode, of course, where you've got a wall plug powering the device. This is just the residual charge, small amount of current coming through the USB port. So on the left-hand side, we've got our home page icon. That's what we're looking at the moment. Underneath that, we have Find ECU. So this is the same sort of vehicle list, really. We can start going through the list to try and find the vehicle that we want to tune. We'll come back to that in a second because we'll need to go through that. But underneath there, we have Settings. Settings is quite useful. You can enable and disable different features on there. So, for example, one of the basic views to go and navigate for the vehicle, it isn't a basic in terms of you're losing features. It's just a simplified view to try and find your vehicle in the application list. Right the way through to the advanced, where you literally click on the manufacturer and you have a whole list of ECUs come up. It's not advanced that you get in extra features, it's basically shortcutted a number of steps out. So if you know the exact ECU you want, you might choose to go the advanced option. We actually enable all of them on there so that we can go and find them whichever way we want. So we can find the vehicle under the basic function, going make, model, year, etc. Or we could go advanced, manufacturer, I want a Med 17.0.1, for example. We've got language and we've got font size, so we can make the screen a little bit bigger effectively, make the text a bit bigger. Depending on the size monitor you're using, it can be quite helpful. And we've got settings for the device as well. So depending on the tool that you're using, if you're using master or slave, you may have the option on there for disable checksum. Quite useful when you're doing developmental work, if you're trying to correct the checksum in another piece of software, WinOS, for example, even ECM Titanium that offers checksum correction. May even be SwiftTech you're using for your checksum corrections. You might not want the tool to do that checksum correction as well. It's sort of like doing your homework and then someone else doing your homework on top. It runs a risk of doubling up and creating an error. So the options are in there. We've got battery notification on. That's important. It tells us this is an issue with the battery voltage is running low. All these sort of warnings are going to pop up on the screen and try and prevent any issues from happening while you're connecting to the vehicle. And of course, at this point, the server is Europe. That's because we're based in Europe. It makes sense. We're connecting to European server. If you're in North America, you probably want something for North America, and so on and so forth for different areas around the world. So that's our settings. We can move down into test our flex. So the test the flex basically will do a self-diagnostic almost on the device, make sure everything's good inside, it's on the correct firmware, nothing went wrong in the last download, basically just checking your tool is in good working order. Underneath that, we have the export logs. We're not going to do that now, but if you're having a problem with the device, if you cannot get a read from a vehicle or worse, and it does happen sometimes when communicating with cars, communication gets interrupted, customer's Bluetooth connects to the car and it suddenly tries to make a call. You want to disconnect that before you write into the vehicle, but these things can cause interruptions when programming. You may need to export the logs to send to the technical support team, Magic Motorsport, on their desk portal. I'm going to cancel that for now. Underneath there, we have news. That'll give any news of any updates that have come out recently. And of course, we've got a link then to the help desk. We've also got that through the home page here as well. So it's quite compact, quite simple, quite straightforward piece of software. We're going to jump into Find ECU. So that option on the left-hand side here, Find ECU, and we're going to start searching for the vehicle. We can use the search functions at the top. We could type in Ford Fiesta, and it will filter out everything that's got Ford Fiesta. So we can actually filter the list based on the manufacturer, so we can click on F for Ford to shortlist that way, or we could scroll down and we can find it in the list of icons and names at the bottom. So you have to find the corresponding page to find Ford. It's much easier, we just click on the F at the top, shortlists Ford for us. And again, we've got all models shown on the screen now. It could be on page 2, 3 or 4, the Fiesta we're looking for. So at this point, we can do a further filter with a search and just type in Fiesta. So we've shortlisted now all the Fiestas in the system. If we click on Fiesta at the top, it's got model year 95 to 2017. That's going to list everything for us. It's going to be quite a list to go through. So we know this is a 2014 vehicle. So we're going to look down the list for something that encompasses that range. And we've got here 2012 to 2015. Well, that makes sense. We'll pick that one out of the list. And we've now got a range of EcoBoosts. And this is a 1 litre EcoBoost. So 100 horsepower, 1 litre EcoBoost. So we can pick that top one. And you see now on the screen we're greeted with 2 ECU options. Now, as long as the connections are the same in terms of it's the same cable for OBD, it doesn't matter which one we pick at this point. As soon as we try and communicate with the ECU, it's either going to kick us out straight away and we know we need to use the other one, or it's going to pop up on there as a little identifier saying MED 17.0. Oh, I selected MED 17.0.1. I need to jump onto the other one. That first little ID, because the ECUs are so similar, is going to give us that bit of extra information that we need. It is imperative that we do the reading on the correct ECU. Okay, some vehicles will allow you to read on a similar ECU type, but it could be if it's a virtual read, it might download the wrong original from a server based on the information that you've put in there. So it is really important that we do get the right ECU. You could be under the wrong vehicle. You could read this potentially as a Ford Focus. Doesn't matter. It's the ECU type that is the most important thing at the end of it. The make, model, even engine size, year of the vehicle is all a guide to try and get you to this screen here, so you select the correct ECU that is equipped to the vehicle, for the right manufacturer of course, but we need to set the right ECU to get the correct data in order to tune the vehicle correctly. This is a MED 17.0.1, so moving to the MED 17.0.1 on the screen, you can see on the right hand side, we're greeted with 3 connection types. Well, we're not connecting on the bench, we're not connecting to the serial connector plugs on the ECU. We're definitely not opening the lid of the ECU and trying to connect to the circuit board. We've got the car here, it's OBD supported, that's what this whole training video is for, so we're going to select OBD. Also gives us a bit of extra information, tells us the protocol number, and tells us automatic checksum correction is available in this case. Let's press next. So now we're greeted with a really important screen. The temptation now is to go, oh, I've got a red connect box, let's hit connect, start talking to the vehicle. Stop. Check the manuals. It's an OBD2 car. It should be straightforward, but it's important that we check the manual and make sure, for example, we've got the right cable. There are 2 OBD2 cables that come in the standard flex kit. For different reasons, you'll need different cables for different makes and models of vehicle, different years, etc. If you've got the wrong cable, you could spend hours trying to communicate to the vehicle. And of course, it's the cable that's wrong. Pinouts are wrong. You're never going to get the communication. So it's important we check. It tells us FLX 2.10. Well, we've got our FLX 2.10. You can see on the back of the actual connector that goes into the tool, it tells you that. OBD2, and it's got the red end to the plug. The other cable has a green end to the plug, so they're quite clear, the 2 different cables. Because it's a nice little coloured image, it tells you which one you need, so you can double check that way. And of course the bags that they come in have the little name on there as well, FLX 2.10 in this case. It's also telling us where it thinks the OBD port is. This is a bit of a guide. It's not always going to be in the location that you see on the screen. Typically the OBD2 port will be in around 1 foot or 2 feet of the steering wheel. Well, in a small cabin like that, that could mean sort of driver's side, passenger side, behind the dash, in the glove box, under the seat. Could be in a number of places. Typically, though, the OBD2 port is found in and around sort of the footwell of the driver's side of the vehicle. Okay, it could be behind a little panel, could be behind a little fuse cover or something in there, but generally in that vicinity. If you're unsure of that, you will need to Google and look online for resources to see where the OBD2 port is. We're going to close our instruction manual. We're going to get ready to connect to the vehicle. So at this point, I'm going to connect my OBD2 cable to the flex. We're going to use that with the little port down here, connect our cable in, nice and easy, and we're going to put the screws into the cable. A lot of people don't do this. They think just pushing it on is enough. It's really important you put those screws on there. Don't over tighten them, but they're on there enough that this cable isn't going to accidentally come out or get knocked or disconnect whilst you're communicating with the vehicle. Again, when reading and writing, it's really important that cables do not become disconnected. You risk corrupting data. So we're going to move to the car now, connect everything into the OBD2 port, and move on to the next step, which is pressing that big red connect button. So now we're connected to the car through the OBD2 port, or diagnostic port. We get to press that big red connect button. So we'll press that now in the software, and it gives us our first instruction, turn the ignition on. It's important that when you are turning the ignition on, you get full ignition too. So whether this is a push button start, a keyless start on there, you've got key cards, actual traditional keys, no matter what it is, you must get full ignition too. Ignition 1 may be enough to communicate with the vehicle, but it's not enough to give a stable connection all the way through the reading and writing on every vehicle. You may get lucky and read a vehicle on ignition 1. You definitely won't be able to write a vehicle on ignition 1, so make sure you definitely get ignition 2. Basically that last click before the vehicle starts. You can press OK, and we should see on the right hand side of the screen it begins its initial communication. It's a bit like doing a handshake with the ECU. It's just sort of saying hello to the ECU. Are you there? Can I see the data? And it's responded saying yes, here are my numbers. So we've got connection. It's also confirmed on the screen there. We can see MED 17.0.1. So we know we've connected under the right protocol, the right ECU type. The next thing we're going to do is click on Read Maps. So the maps is the data we need for tuning. So again, it's going to give us a message, please turn on the dash. Well, it's already on. The ignition's already on, so we get to press OK. And it's connecting. You can see all the messages coming up on the right-hand side of the screen. You may notice sometimes a sort of chime sound comes from the vehicle. Different vehicles make different sounds, beeps and various different squeaks coming from the vehicle as ignition's on, as you're starting that communication process to the ECU. So we can see on there, it's now reading section 1 of 1. This will vary on different ECUs as to how quickly it goes through. I mean, on the left-hand side of the screen under the read maps, we can see we're already at 44, 45%. So it's quite a quick process on this, and it is quite a quick tool. The less time we can spend connected to the vehicle, the better, of course. So the quicker the read and write times, the safer it is for us, less chance of things going wrong on there, cables getting disconnected, power cuts and all that sort of stuff. So once it gets to the end of the reading process, we'll be greeted with a save box. We'll save the file to our computer. You may have a specific location, you may have a tuning file folder, you may have something set up on your computer where you put the files, maybe a separate drive. Doesn't matter what it is, what I recommend is that you store the files consistently. ORIs and mods for the same vehicle, store them in the same folder. There's nothing worse than having a folder on one computer saying all your original files, and then on a completely different drive, device, location, you've got all the mod files. How do you compare them against each other? How do you know what belongs to what? This also happens when we see a lot of people save things as red Fiesta. Well, if you tune a lot of Fiestas, you're probably going to see more than one red one. So it's important you save the name with something consistent and something unique for the vehicle, such as a registration plate or license plate. Ideally the chassis number, but to keep it simple, license plate or registration plate should be more than enough. So file is ready. Do you want to save? We're going to click on yes. So we're going to our desktop to save this. You'll notice on your software, it will probably come up with some information specific to the vehicle, may even pull up a chassis number on there. This ECU typically brings up FOMOCO at the start of the name for Ford Motor Company, the ECU type and the chassis number. Obviously for training purposes, we're not going to give out chassis numbers of different vehicles, so we're just going to call this Ford Fiesta VIEZU Training. just so you know what we're working with here, and we're going to call it the read. So it's nice and simple. I'm not going to put an example registration number in there or a fake registration number, but I do recommend you put a genuine reg, license plate, or even the chassis number of the vehicle in there, so you've got that unique identifier. I'm just going to press save, and that's it. It's saved. We can see at the bottom it says read maps finished. So at this point, we're no longer communicating with the vehicle. We can at this point, if we need to disconnect, maybe the customer needs to go, they've got a meeting or an urgent errand that needs to be run, or they're coming back in a few days to have the tuning done, whatever it may be, you've only read a copy of the data from the ECU. So whether it's pulled from a virtual server or you've taken a physical copy of the data from the ECU, as long as you turn the ignition off, disconnect everything, basically reverse the steps that we did before we read the vehicle, the customer can drive on their way, no problem at all. They can come back later on in the day, have the tuning file uploaded. So if you're obviously a slave dealer, you're going to send the file into the VIEZU Technical Support team through our desk portal. And if you're a master tuner, you may be struggling with this car, not quite sure what you need to adjust on there to get the full power out of it, you can feel free to send it through to the VIEZU Technical Support team as well, and the guys upstairs will get the file done for you and sent back based on your requirements and requests for that tuning. So we've got our tune file back, we've got our VPerf file back as per our request. The technical support team have done all their wizardry and magicry on the file, sent it back to us, we've got it saved on the desktop, ready to write back to the vehicle. So it's similar to the reading steps. At this point, we're going to press write on the maps. It's going to ask us for the file that we want to load into the CU or control unit, and we're going to select on our desktop our Ford Fiesta VIEZU Training VPerf. Really cool step here on the Magic Tools. It gives you an extra sort of second chance really to check the file that you're working on. Check the file on the screen, check the name is correct. It is easy to double click on the wrong thing on your computer, maybe the mouse moved a bit or you dragged the wrong file into the open. Double check the name of the file to make sure it is what you want to write back to the ECU. This is your last chance to double check you've got the right thing. If you need to change it, it gives you the option here. You don't have to cancel the whole process, you can just quickly press change file and go and grab the one that you need. This is the correct file, this is what we want. We're going to press upload and it's going to go and connect to the vehicle. Now we can see before it even starts to write, unlike some tuning tools out there on the market, this is giving us the instruction, turn the ignition on. Ignition back on, full ignition too, remember, and we press OK. So it's communicating, it's got sections it's counted on there, it's checking a checksum on there of course, with the little beeps coming from the dashboard. You get those funny noises from some of the cars depending on what system's in there, CAN bus, K-line, etc, etc. And we can see at the top of the screen, it's writing back now. And it's already up to 24–25%. It's a pretty quick car to communicate to. It was a minute or two reading, it's going to be a minute or two writing as well. These are great cars for tuning as a whole anyway, because they are so quick to communicate to. They get great horsepower gains. Little 1 litre, 100 horsepower, can be uprated to the 140 horsepower model, another 15 to 20 horsepower on top very safely. So great car for tuning. In that short space of time, it's connected to the ECU, it's done the erasing of the section it needs, it's wrote the new section, it's checked it all, checksums are done, and now it's going through a clearing DTCs. It's important that we understand it's not doing a full diagnostic tool sweep of the car, it's not deleting DTCs for airbags and suspension faults and various other things on there. It's basically almost removing the DTCs that show the trace of it being in there. So it's, whilst it's communicated to the ECU for writing, there may be a communication error with another module. It's cleared those sort of codes out of the vehicle. We do always recommend, no matter what the tuning tool is doing, that you put the diagnostic tool that you've got on the car after tuning and just double check for any fault codes. There may be a residual fault code in a transmission control unit, for example. This device isn't talking to the transmission control unit or to the ABS module, for example, whilst it's programming. Put your diagnostic in there and just clear any of those residual fault codes. Some vehicles may even require a battery reset just to restore that communication when the battery's reconnected. And that's it, 54 seconds it took in total. The car's tuned. The next step, of course, is to disconnect everything from the vehicle. So we're going to turn the ignition off. So we know there's no power to the ECU now from the tuning tool side of things. That's it. Disconnect from the OBD2 port, disconnect the charger from the vehicle, making sure we take the 3-pin power supply out first so it's not powered through the extension lead. Give it a moment or two just to sort of decharge itself, and then disconnect the crocodile clips from the positive of the battery and the earth, or negative on the battery if needs be. Run a quick diagnostic on the car again to make sure everything's all good, no residual fault codes in there. We can close the bonnet, take it for a test drive, give the keys back to a very happy customer afterwards. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for more training videos coming from Viezu Technical Academy and from VIEZU Technologies. Hope you enjoyed this and hope you found it very informative.